So I want to just tell you a little bit about Alice. Alice Shikina is a divorce mediator and negotiation coach. She coaches entrepreneurs on how to improve their negotiation skills in order to close more sales. And I have to tell you, you don't want to mess with Alice. She has a background in acting and directing and uses her skills and acting training in her mediation and negotiation, especially during her trainings. She's a single mom of 2 teenage boys and recently published a book called Negotiating with Your Kids. I think it's awesome. And she also she runs a regular negotiation training course for small groups. And with that, I present Al Shikina. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to give you this information that you're going to find very, very helpful. So a couple things about the presentation. One, you'll get the PowerPoint, so you don't need to take all these notes because I'm going to give you like way too much information. You're going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. So the first part of it is sort of just, I need to give that to you. The main meat of my talk is going to be about the negotiation techniques. And then you get to go practice. So I'm going to give you some tools and you're going to practice. So this is a hands-on session. So I'm super excited. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. All right. So today we're talking about negotiating a win-win contract. So funny little story, and Shelly already knows this. I was chatting with my boyfriend who is an attorney, and I told him I'm going to talk about negotiating the terms. And he was like, you cannot have this conversation with anyone unless you talk about all what makes a contract. So I'm going to go over that very briefly to make sure you have all the information that you need. All right. So what constitutes a proper contract? There are 4 pieces of it. There's the offer, the acceptance, consideration, and defenses. So I'll go over those for you. And so you have to have all of these to make sure that you have a proper contract. And that means even consultants. You don't have to have some big, huge company. Literally, if you have one client and that person is one person, you should have a contract between the 2 of you. Always, always, okay? So don't just provide a service to someone, have them pay you money, and not have a contract in place, because it can get you into very hot water very quickly, all right? So the offer is the express intent to enter into an agreement, all right? Saying like, Shelly, I'm gonna use your services. She's like, okay, this is the service that I'm going to provide. And so that's written out there. And that I am interested in accepting this, right? Express an intent to be bound by the terms. So Shelly will have her terms, cancellation terms. What happens? Do I get a refund if I cancel? And what are the number of days? And how long am I going to be working with Shelly? Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year? That sort of thing. So that all needs to be in there. And then consideration is usually a stated bargain for exchange. So usually it's money for a product or service. So I'm going to pay Shelly a certain amount of money. I'm in agreement with her terms, and in return, Shelly is going to provide me with whatever services she has outlined in the contract. Now, there's the last thing that there are defenses, reasons why the contract is not legitimate, all right? So these are defenses. So these are some of them. For example, she might say, well, you hired me to come to your house and check out your wardrobe and help you fix it, but COVID prevented me from performing this because now I can't come to your house, so I'm breaking the contract, right? Or perhaps maybe you're dealing with somebody who has an unequal bargaining position. You feel like, oh, well, you were a huge company and you kind of strong-armed me into this. I signed it. When I went to talk to my attorney, they were like, oh, no, this is very, very unfair. This is very in favor of the company, not you. You shouldn't take this, okay? There's another one that there's a counter offer, right? So if I offer something to you all and I say it's going to cost this much money, when you counter, the first offer is off the table. All right, I'm going to say that one more time. A counter offer takes the original offer off the table. All right, so you need to remember that. So when you're bargaining, for example, for a job, and they say, we will pay you $50,000. to come to this job. You might say, well, I'm going to go and negotiate. I'm going to ask for 60. You need to know that when you ask for 60, they are no longer bound by the law to still offer the 50 if they don't accept your counteroffer of 60. Because your counteroffer of 60 is now what's on the table, and they can either counter or they can say no, but they can also walk away. They can say, you know what, we don't want to bargain with you, we don't like you, and we're taking our offer, goodbye. Right? And you can't say, well, you originally offered me 50, like, let's sign for that. They're not obligated to, because you countered. Once you counter, that original offer goes away. All right. Or the fact that you entered into this agreement under duress. The most common one that you all see in movies is when someone is signing some kind of, like, you know, the police are talking and they're keeping somebody awake and they're feeling stressed out and they're saying, hey, you need to sign this, you need to sign this. And eventually they say, okay, fine, I did it. I signed it. I did this. And then they sign the guilty, form, right? That's just the most notorious one, but that you entered into this agreement under some kind of duress. It also could be that maybe you were negotiating for hours and hours and hours, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I was so tired. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just wanted to go home and go to bed. And I signed this, but I woke up in the morning and I realized that was a big mistake. Okay. So in any case, all right, how to prevent defenses. Make a record of it. If it's something that's, in the legal system, then you can memorialize it in court. You go back to the courtroom, the judge is there, and you say, yes, I agreed to do this. And then the judge, the court reporter types it all up. They memorialize it. You can have the contract ready to sign immediately so that they don't tell you today, I'm going to sign. I really can't wait to work with you, Shelley. But I have dinner I got to go make. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Let's sign the contract. And then Shelley comes back, and the next day I'm like, I changed my mind. I don't want to work with you after all. I don't want to do it. And now Shelley's lost the contract because, like, she didn't have me sign it right then and there. So you want to try to have people sign things right away because you don't want them to have second thoughts. That happens very frequently. Maybe not necessarily with consulting, but with, like, settlement agreements. When people are saying, okay, then they go and they start thinking about it. And then they're like, oh, I actually don't want to sign it because of, whatever reason. So you want to, as much as possible, have them sign it as soon as possible. If you're in a legal situation, you want to make sure attorneys or the people with authority are present, right? Because if I have a settlement agreement with you and you're like, okay, are you good with this, Alice? Yes, I'm good with this. Okay, are you good with it? You sign it. And I say to you, I need to go talk to my attorney. I have a meeting with him tomorrow afternoon. I'll be back. I'm fine with this, but I just need to make sure that he says it's okay. And then guess what happens? The next day I come back and I go, I'm not going to sign it. I changed my mind. I got other information from my attorney and now I don't feel comfortable. Okay. And a tip for you all. The courts, if ever a contract goes into court, the courts favor the person who did not write the contract. Okay. If it's ever contested, the person who did not write the contract is the one who's usually favored because they feel like the person who wrote it is the one who had control. So just things to think about. Okay. So we're going to talk about negotiating the terms, and that's the main part of my talk today. One of the main things you want to do, you want to be prepared. I cannot state this enough. So many people feel like, well, I don't really know how to negotiate, or I'm not really sure what to do. Number one rule, at least prepare. So how do you do this? Think about your BATNA. A BATNA means the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What does that mean? It means if Shelley and I don't come to an agreement today, what's the best thing that I have that's off the table, right? Somewhere in the background in my life, what's the best thing that can happen to me? If I am going for a job interview and my BATNA might be, well, if I don't get this job and I don't land it, my BATNA is I get to still live with my parents in their basement. So, that you want to know what that is. And you also want to know what's the worst thing that is going to happen in the event that there is no agreement. For example, maybe the worst thing is not that I get to live in the basement of my parents' house, but if I don't get that job, it means I'm going to be homeless. So you want to think of both of these things. And what does that do? It frames your negotiation so that you can very easily understand when you have offers coming at you, whether it's something that you want to continue to negotiate, or if your BATNA is better, then you know not to take that offer. Do not take an offer if you have a better BATNA. All right. If you've got a better deal, maybe you have a job already that's paying you $100,000, and then you have another job and they're coming in at $95,000. Well, you're not going to take that offer. All right. Because you have a better BACN, unless, similar to my sister, who is considering a job change right now, she wants more time. She's working 60 or 70 hours a week. She wants to work 40. So she's looking for another job where she knows the pay will be down lower, but she wants more time in her life. So for her, the BACN, the best alternative, if she doesn't find this other job, is that she will continue to work 70 and 80 hours a week. That's her BACN. Okay. And the WATNA, the worst alternative, is that she may become sick, right? From stress, from overwork. She may not be able to keep this job if she falls ill and cannot continue to work in this position, right? So that's the worst thing that could happen if she doesn't find another job. So you want to know what's the best thing for you as well as the worst thing. What do you want? And I cannot stress how many times people go into negotiations not having thought through what is it that they want. What do you want? Think it through, make a list, really consider all of your own interests, and then you're not done. You're only halfway done. Then you want to think about what the other side wants. What is it? What are their interests? And if you don't know, in some instances, you can have a meeting before the negotiation so that you can find this information out. Not always, but in some cases. For example, let's say that you are kind of like friends with someone, acquaintance friends with another person, and you think they may be wanting to work with you, right? So instead of necessarily calling a separate meeting, when you're chatting with them informally, you might find out what are the things that they want that would that you can help them with, right? And ask them a lot of questions, find out what their goals are, find out, do they have time and energy to pursue that particular goal? And you want to find all that information out before you try to sell to them, before you have the conversation to say like, hey, let's work together, right? So Shelly needs to ask me questions like, do you feel happy with like the way your Zoom room looks? Do you feel like it needs work? Are you willing to spend some time and energy towards that? How important is that to you? You need to dig and dig and dig before you even walk into a sales call. Because then what you're going to do is you're going to talk about the pain points and how you can help them resolve their pain points. However, if I say to Shelly, it's super important to me that I have my Zoom room look really going well, et cetera, and she says on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it? And I says a 10, it's really, really important. She may think in her mind, great, Alice would be a great customer. But then she's going to ask a second question. And the second question is going to be, on a scale of 1 to 10, like how willing are you to put like time, energy, money towards that goal to make sure you get to that goal? And I might say, actually, it's more like a 2. I don't really want to think about it, even though it's really important to me. I have other things going on. It's kind of low on my priority list. That's great information for Shelly, because then she may think this is either not the right customer or maybe it's just not the right time. You want to make sure that those things align. And sometimes the customer or the client may not even realize that they're not aligned on those two parts, right? That they may think it's important, it's important, it's important. And then you ask me, well, are you going to do anything about it? And I'm like, well, not really. I don't want to spend time. I don't want to get coached. I don't want to do this. I don't want to work on myself, right? So then you know this is not a good fit, okay? And then pro tip, consider what the other side might say and draft that script, particularly if they're going to ask difficult questions. If they're going to ask difficult questions, have your answers ready. The best way to do it, if you have a big negotiation coming up, is to pull a friend and say, can we just role play this? And you give them their role and you practice, right? Because that way you can practice overcoming the objections and that sort of thing. All right, so we're going to go into some of the strategies. So ask easy questions first. Build rapport. All right, so if you're going to someone's buying their car, you want to just chat with them. Oh, like, I'm curious why you're selling the car. How did the car run for you? How many years did you have the car? You're not just building rapport. You are getting information. You are investigating. All right. It's so important because, for example, if I'm chatting and they're like, oh, I'm going to be moving, I'm going to go to Europe, and so that's why I'm selling my car, I now have another piece of valuable information. They are leaving the country. So the person selling the car might want to keep the car until the very last day. So now I have another bargaining chip that you may not have had if you do not try to build rapport and you do not try to, talk to them. And so I might say, hey, any chance you'd be willing to lower the price if I let you keep the car until the day that you leave, and we can figure something out for the exchange of the car? And they might say, that is fantastic, because I was trying to figure out how I'm going to live for the next 3 weeks without a car, right? So you want to try to add to the pie, and you want to add to the pie before you ever talk about money. Add to the pie meaning, what are all the bargaining chips? What are all the things that we can negotiate? Because if the only thing we have to negotiate is money, and that is it, it's going to be very difficult. Some of the most difficult mediations I've had are small claims where they're just arguing over $1,000. And that's the only thing they have. They have nothing else to try to bargain or negotiate with. And so they have a hard time getting to an agreement. You want to keep your mind curious. Stay curious, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Okay. And if you are curious, sincerely curious, then people will be open to answering them. But if you're not curious and you're just asking questions, it's going to come off sounding like, you're like building pressure or whatever. So just be curious and ask a lot of questions, and you will be surprised at how much information you gather, and then use that information in your negotiation skills. All right. Talk about money last. You don't want to talk about money in the very beginning. And a great way to sidestep this, if someone asks you, well, so how much is it? A really good thing to say is, we will get to the money. We will talk about it. I promise you, but not quite yet. Let's talk about this. And you're going to redirect. Okay. So that's a good way to get away from the money problem. If someone just comes to you and says, well, how much for your services, before they even hear anything? And you can say, I'm happy to talk about how much it is. Let me first tell you what it is that I do, and then we can talk about money after that. Okay. Position-based versus interest-based is the one that we're going to be practicing today. So I just want to make sure that you all understand this one. Position-based is when you are saying, I want this thing, right? Like, I want to go to Hawaii. And then Shelley says, well, I want to go to Canada. That is our position. We each have our position. Human beings have a tendency to argue positions because that's all we know. What you want to do is you want to find out what the interests are. And from there, you can build a solution together. So I might say, well, Shelley, can you tell me the reasons why going to Canada is important to you? She may say, I want to go to a place where I've never been before. She might say, I want to go somewhere where it's not a very long plane ride away. Or I might want to go somewhere where I know someone, right? And so then I will do the same thing. I will talk about why I want to go to Hawaii. And then we will try to figure out common ground based on our interests, not the position, not the Hawaii versus Canada position, but what our interests are. We may be able to pick one or the other, or we may end up with a third destination or a third solution that is a win-win for both parties. So this is the one that you'll be practicing today, okay? Anchoring is when you put down the first number first, and that is a good strategy when you have information, when you have the knowledge about whatever it is that you want to buy or sell. If you have the knowledge of it, then put down the first number. You want to try to pull the negotiations in your favor. Do not do this if you have no information about whatever it is that you're bidding on or trying to buy. If you don't know it, do not put out a number first. Do not anchor. You want to look for creative solutions. Again, add value to the pie. I mentioned you want to just figure out what are the other things that we can bargain for. What other things, right? I might say to Shelley, I have points. And so if you go to Hawaii with me, you can save money because we'll just use my points. And then that way we don't have to spend any money, right? So I'm trying to add value. If I know Shelley is saying, well, I want to save money, that's why I'm picking Canada because the airfare is cheaper there. I might say, well, guess what? I've got points. You don't have to spend any money. Actually, I will give you my points and let's go to Hawaii. So now that I know what her interests are, I can also add value to the pie with the points that I have, right? You can also ask, where are you inflexible, or what are the non-negotiables? Because when they tell you that, you know that everything else is. It's a really good way to figure out what exactly can you negotiate by asking them, what are your non-negotiables? People will be happy to tell you. And then what is cheap to you but valuable to them? And you also may want to make 2 equivalent offers. All right, so making an offer, you have 2 things. The main thing that you want to remember is that you don't care if they take either one. Do not make 2 offers where you're like, I'm 80% wanting, one, but I hope they pick the 100% one that I want. Do not do that, because they're inevitably going to pick the one that you don't want them to pick, and then you're going to be unhappy about that, okay? So we're right at the time. We're going to start the role play. It is 20 minutes long. I'm going to put this in the chat. Oh, also, I want to show you, hang on a second. So when you go into the breakout rooms, there's an ask for help button down at the bottom, if you can see it. When you click on that, we get a notification that you want me to come in and chat with you, or you have a question or what have you, okay? So if you need my help, you're going to click that. So I'm going to put in the chat the role play that you're going to do. So these are 2 different roles. There's the senior manager of a computer company, and there's also the computer consultant, okay? And so what you're going to do is you're going to be broken out into pairs, and you're going to negotiate this difference. One side says, I can't spend more than $120,000. And the consultant is saying, well, the lowest I can go is 240. Below that is a loss. So what I would like for you to do is we're going to give you 4 minutes to sort of like think about your interests and think about maybe what you can do, your strategies. And then you're going to have 15 minutes to negotiate this, and then 5 minutes to debrief it with your partner. What they did well, what they didn't go well. If you don't finish it and you don't get to an end, it's okay. I just want you to stop 5 minutes before. So 4 minutes of prep, 15 minutes of negotiation, 5 minutes of debrief, and then we come back to the main room and we'll sort of debrief as a group. I want you to do interest-based, okay? You want to think about what is everyone's interests and how can we get there? But you're still going to try to get as much as you can for yourself, okay? I don't want you to just give away the whole farm, all right? Any questions on this?
Yes, I just want to ask you to clarify just a little bit. So we're having a person A and a person B, and they will retain their roles as person A and person B. Do you want to just go over the scenario very quickly?
Yeah. So the senior manager of a computer company, and you want to work with this consultant, but the most you can pay for this contract to implement a software system is $120,000. It didn't come in on your budget. It's a surprise fee for this year. Okay. So it doesn't come in the budget, and that's the reason. This is important. The other person will play the computer consultant, and in order to do the work they've asked you to do, the lowest you can bid is $240,000. Sorry, I missed the K. $240,000. The scope of the work includes customize and install new software that will manage the production scheduling, engineering, record keeping, order entry, shipping, invoicing, and warranty data tracking, and training of the employees on the new system. That is what that $240,000 is for. All right. Whoever's name, your first name comes earlier in the alphabet, you're going to be playing the senior manager, and then the other person will be playing the computer consultant. Okay. So we will be typing into the message like, okay, it's time to start your negotiation. Okay, it's time to start your debrief. All right. You'll be getting those messages while you're in your breakout rooms. Okay. Any questions? All right, I think we're ready to go, Shelley.
Yeah. Okay, I think I have the breakouts ready. So you're going to be most groups, you're going to just be the 2. And I think there might be one group of 3 people. So if you want to.
The group of 3 people, 2 of you can play one role together as a team. Okay. So perhaps 2 senior managers, and you can use the chat to try to like strategize. Okay.
Great. Right. Okay. I just have to fix one thing before I kick it off. Okay, so 4 minutes in, I'll send a message that it's actually time to start the negotiations. And
Yes.
then another alert when you have 2 minutes left of the negotiation. And then when it's time to start the debrief. All right, go play.
Awkward. We had a little bit of a misunderstanding about what we were supposed to be doing. So anyway.
Did you figure it out?
Well, my understanding and Herb's understanding were very different. So
Okay.
he was more intractable than he normally is. And so, yeah, I mean, that was such a big gap. That was hard.
So that was interesting that you had a negotiation about the negotiation.
After, during the debrief, because I thought, this doesn't feel like we're getting where we're supposed to get to a place where we both get what we want. We weren't getting there.
Interesting. Okay. So I wanted to just hear a little bit about, first, I want to just ask a question, and I do want to hear some feedback. I want to ask a question of what you all think is a likelihood of such a scenario actually resolving in real life. Like if this was a real life scenario, you can put in the chat, likely, unlikely, very unlikely, very likely. I would love to hear what people write. How likely is this scenario to resolve in real life? Okay, very unlikely, unlikely. All right. Likely it happens every day, very likely, great. I love that it's very, very, like we have everywhere from very likely to very unlikely. And so I would love for people to put into the chat some of your lists of concessions. What are some of the things that you offered to each other?
Can we share these out loud rather than have to go and read everything?
Yes, we can do that as well.
It's just more interactive.
Okay.
If you don't mind me recommending.
That's fine. That's fine.
I prefer that too. I can't think and listen and read at the same time.
Okay. Okay. What are some of the things that, raise your hand, Judy?
Well, I suggested phases, as a possibility, because the number was so it was double what my budget was. So I said, what if we did phases?
Okay, great. What about Shelley?
I cut down the training from 8 months to 4 months. And instead of not just cutting it down, but also training the trainers that will be training in that company, as opposed to training everybody.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Moss.
Yeah, actually, it was the same thing. Train the trainer rather than having waves of training ongoing throughout the company.
All right, great. Bruce, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I learned a very good lesson in this: is never horse trade with a professional horse trader. Robert is literally a horse trader at one time in his life, and so that made we want to start a business together. I think our interaction was amazing, but you're right. The 120 and the 240 so far apart that we really looked at what were the top needs that we had. Could they come in and work with my team and others? How much could my team do? I was the company, and we ended up with a $75,000 3-month test to really drill down on two things. What was I thought data capturing and accuracy of our data was the most important. And let's focus on that. And then they would come back with recommendations for other phases to address the other things, but not to try to take on the whole enchilada, because we both agreed we don't know that much about each other. So let's start small. But I found it a very fun exercise.
Awesome.
From my side, I thought I had the best partner in the world. Bruce is really good at this. The business part is so big, you can't nail everything down now. But at the end of a few minutes of talking with him, I'd play poker with him over the phone. This is a guy that I could trust and work with, and that's a wonderful quality to have as a negotiator.
So
Thanks,
it
Robert.
sounds like you really drilled into the interest base to figure out what the interests were for both parties to try to come up with a solution.
Bruce,
Absolutely.
He's very good at that.
Good job. Awesome. Erica.
I hit the wrong little reaction thing, but I realized, well, maybe I do have something to say. And I think what we had shared in our debrief was when you have the intent that you want to make this work, it's easier to negotiate. You know, like I liked that person and I wanted to, it kind of goes to what Bruce and Robert were saying as well, is when there's some level of a connection, then even though I was the manager, even though I knew I had resistance toward needing to spend money on this, I still wanted to try to make it work. So I think there's something there just on a human level. When you have that connection, you're more creative and there's more options.
Absolutely. Very, very well put. Thank you, Erica. Yes, that's why rapport is really important, because then it really makes you work harder to get to a resolution. Jenny.
Okay, I had a great partner because I know nothing about budgets or how to put budgets together. And Annette has done it as a career. So she helped me. To be quite honest, I was struggling because I don't know a lot about putting a budget together. So, and she gave me, actually, she was great. She was training me on how to do that. And so she was amazing. I mean, all these things that came up and then my brain was going, yeah, that's how you do it. So thank you, Annette. Yeah, it helped me with, like I said, I don't put a spreadsheet with my finances together. So, but.
Thank you, Jenny. Great. Deborah.
I was super lucky. I had Steve as my negotiating buddy on the other side. And as you all probably know, he has experience and expertise in this whole realm. I'm coming at it from a whole different place. And wouldn't you know it, I was the manager. So I had to pretend, and I'm really pretty good at role playing, but it was really, it really took me to a whole different space of trying to figure out how to work with something within a sector of a program that needs to happen. And yet we're looking at such a major divide. And what Steve and I came up with is literally divide it into segments and spread it over several years so it can make use of, I can go to upper management and say, this is how we can make it work. We want to work with him. We want to work with that company. They can offer us what they can give to us what we need. We've already figured that one out. And if we divide it and spread it throughout a 2-year budget, it's more realistic. And thank you, Steve, for helping that all come to be. Just saying.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope you all got a lot out of not just hearing the tips, but also putting them into practice. Did everyone sort of feel like they learned a little bit, like actually doing the workshop? Okay, awesome. So my time is up. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to put my contact information into the chat, and feel free to reach out. I do have a negotiation coaching group. So if you're interested, let me know and I'll give you more information. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was terrific. I hope that you might stay around, Alice. We go into breakout groups, and my guess is people might want to chat with you a little bit further because it was such an engaging presentation.